Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. My eyes looked like those crazy eyes for a second when I did that. Hi, it's me, Patty Lee, your host here on the True Crime Grapevine. So, my New Year's resolution is to go live every night for a nightcap. Um, so a nightcap's usually like a brandy or some other drink that I usually won't drink. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with a regular whatever. And since we're all saying yes to the new year and maybe some resolutions, or at least trying to be better, um, like for me, I'm trying to be better about streaming, better about keeping up with true crime. There is so much true crime that personally I can't keep up with it. I thought, well, I'm gonna catch up. I catch up every day, but I don't talk to you guys every day. So now I'm gonna try to. We're drinking, I think it looks backwards right on the screen. It's Yes Way Rose, um, which isn't really a nightcap, but it's gonna be a nightcap for me. So if you don't know, hi, I'm Patty Lee, your dyslexic armchair detective. I started this channel because unlike a lot of other YouTubers, they'll say, well, I don't watch a lot of YouTube because they're busy creating and they do a lot of live streaming. They will live stream court, live stream other creators or like News Nation, Court TV, little clips that they do commentary on, which is great because that's what I watch. And then I watch all of that all the time. If you ask my family, they think I'm crazy. Let's drink to that. Mm. It's definitely a rosé. So I don't like the way I don't really love alcohol, which is weird that I'm on the grapevine. So I decided to pair it with drinks. But look, I don't like it. But let me try it again, right? It's like that weird thing where you're like, I don't like a smell. All right. Um, so yeah, yes, way to rosé, yes to the new year. Hopefully everybody can uh hear me. So, what has been going on? I haven't spoken to you guys for 2 weeks, but I have been watching true crime the whole entire time, and has things gone crazy? So, let me just do I wanna do 2 little updates, not little, but 2 important updates before I get to the Idaho for because we all know there's a suspect. Not gonna say they've got the guy because we wanna make sure that we call, um Brian, the suspect, because he's just a suspect right now. What I wanted to start with was right after I uploaded my last episode. Immediately after that, it seems like um, Kayla Montgomery. That's not who I meant to say. Um, the Mikey Vaughns, they had stopped digging the ground because they did not find his body, but they updated the case. And one of my favorite creators, Chris McDonough of the Interview Room, was there in the background. So he must have been working with the case. He's not just a podcaster. He had a long distinguished career as a detective, I believe in California, and he was with, I think he calls it the card team, the child crimes team. And that would make sense and he also now is a cold case detective. He works with a group of other detectives that he often has on his podcast, The Interview Room. And I am sure that he would be welcome in looking into this because it is it's not really a cold case, but I mean, it's been over a year and a half now and it involves a child. So they still have Sandra Wondry and her husband, Stacy Wondry. They are both incarcerated right now for Sandra for not reporting a death. And she is also being looked at, and I think rightfully so, unlike our friend Lori Daybell, for being mentally incompetent. So she's being restored to competency, which good luck with that. I mean, I just think she seems to be developmentally delayed. If you don't know, I have almost degree. It's called All But Dissertation. We'll be talking about dissertations a lot this year. Um, but I would say developmentally, she always seemed off, and I wasn't even sure she got the story right. I think the last time I spoke about that case, I said I didn't think they'd find. I thought maybe she was not being truthful, but it seems like there was something that went on. Maybe the body was moved. Cadaver dogs did hit. They didn't find anything, and they searched like the whole yard and sifted through the whole thing. But they named two other suspects, and I will talk more about that. This is just going to be a quick catch up. I am really sorry. It's not going to be completely detailed. And with lives, I'm not sure how to show pictures. I'm thinking about that. Again, my New Year's resolution is not just to be more communicative and help you guys keep up with everything, but also to be better with technology. And that is going to be a big ask. But that's what New Year's are for, new learning. All right. So there was movement forward in the Michael Vaughn case. They haven't found him yet. They do think they know that there was a group involved. Now, they do think there was a death. I don't know, but if this group was involved, maybe there was some trafficking. I don't know, which would be worse or better. Um, However you send good vibes, whether it be prayers or just thinking about or whatever, to his mom, they're going through it, and to have Christmas without him, hard. Even though it's the second one, but it's devastating. I am sure. Um, Speaking of another little boy, there was a boy in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is going to come back around, who was found. His body was found in 1957. Yes. So why am I talking about it now? You may have heard about this case because I think I've heard about it on a lot of the true crime that talk about old historic cases that are still unsolved. And one of them was this boy in the box. They found his identity, and by finding his identity, the naming the victim, they can look back. He was found to be a 3-year-old. They went through ancestry, genealogy, and because he had been buried, they had to exhume him, get more DNA, like through the 80s. I mean, they exhumed him, I think, 2 or 3 times. The last time he was exhumed, not only did they get enough DNA, but they also then he was put into instead of he started out in a pauper's grave. Maybe it was the first after the first exhumation, he was placed into a grave that the town named him, here lies the unknown child. Um, they didn't put the boy in the box, I don't believe, on his gravestone, but just like America's unknown boy. Now they have a name for him, which of course I don't have my notes. And so I'm failing to remember. But I wanted to tell you about it, and I will get the names and be hopefully better organized as the year goes on, since I'll be doing this every day and there won't be such a large amount of information to tell you. But what was really interesting was that use of this DNA led them to his mother, I believe, first, and then they got the father's name from the birth certificate, but she had given the boy up for adoption. And so now this has been, numerous exhumations, numerous tests, detectives. Um, I think the two main detectives now, just the second one recently died, but they stayed with it their whole entire careers. People do not like detectives do not give up. And anybody would say like a 1957, a 3-year-old, what are you going to do? Oh, they did it. So they kept trying and trying until they caught up. This genealogical DNA is amazing. And if you're thinking about committing a crime, don't, because you will get caught by this. Swear to God, or whatever you believe in. All right. So that case, the child has been identified and they will find the adoptive parents. And so we will be hearing about that. And the police chief in Philadelphia, she said, "Yeah, we're coming for you." So look forward to that. Whoever, if they're still alive, let's hope they are, because you know they need to pay for their crime of hurting this child. All right, so that's 2 little boys that we're talking about, that horrific things that happened to them. But that DNA, very important. Why is that very important? And how does Philadelphia come into it? Well, if you've heard, a man who is 28, his look at me, I know his name. I've heard it a million times today. And since December, they arrested him, no knock warrant, which means a no knock warrant is when they don't knock at your house. They just rush in, and it, um, it has been controversial because police have made mistakes and they've rushed in, and they've people who didn't expect the police shot at the intruders, not hearing police, and police shot back and killed Breonna Taylor, I believe, was the most notable in recent times. And that's horrific, right? But one of the reasons they do this is because people can destroy evidence, they can escape. I mean, if you just knock, you give them time, you give them awareness. So there's been conflicting times. So because the crime took place in Idaho and in northern Idaho, that's on Pacific time. Southern Idaho, I believe, is on Mountain time. People were saying it happened at 3:30 or 3:45 in the morning, and then people are saying no, no, it was 1:45 because it happened in Eastern Standard Time. So it is unclear if it was like 1:30 in the morning or if it was 3 o'clock, but it was in the middle of the night, still dark outside. They rushed in. There was no resistance. They arrested Brian Kohlberger. Brian with a Y. And let's see. So 30, 31, and today. So in 48 hours, there has been so much information. Some of it is factual, but most of it is speculation and rumor, which we're used to it, right? So let me address the first thing about speculation and rumor. My last update was about the police and how everybody was saying this is case is going cold and they're not doing enough, and I had pointed out, look, there's 4 different people that were hurt, murdered, 6 people in the house. We didn't know who was the main target, if anybody, and that meant that they had like 4 different, well, 6 different people really, but specifically for the 4 that were killed to go look at their circles of, who was closest to them, and then keep going out in those circles. I won't go into the whole thing. I talked about it before. It would take a lot of time. And then there's DNA. DNA is collected, it has to be analyzed, then it has to come back. We also know now, because they used, back to the boy in the box, genetic DNA. They had the DNA of the suspect that they were able to then put into a database, and it came back to one of his relatives. And then they start having to go back to, okay, so looking at all of that person's relatives, who's the right age, who was in the right place. And since the relative, I don't know if his relatives, some were in, I think some are in, or at least those claiming to be his relatives, talking about his veganism and how he wouldn't he wanted them to get a whole set of pans to cook because he couldn't eat out of pans that meat were cooked in, were relatives from Vegas. They said there was a funeral. So maybe relatives in Nevada. He has 2 sisters, 2 older sisters, I believe. And this is, it's unclear, but there's talk about one lived in Moscow. He was going to school in the University of Washington, which we had talked about before, that Pullman, Washington, and Moscow, Idaho are very close, 7 miles apart about. And that was another thing where people are like, oh, this little town and these little police, they can't handle it. They did all right. And they had the FBI. They called right in. They had called in the state police. They had called in the FBI. So all of that speculation, I'm very surprised at. Only Bill Cannon, I know for sure, of Police Off the Cuff, was like, hey, I got some things right. I got some things wrong. I was, he said, even I was going down the thing of, well, what are they doing? Are the police doing enough? Do they need to just let the FBI take over? He at least admitted it. Most YouTubers and I'm not going to mention the names, but they were on this whole, and I'm sorry, but it was pushed by, in my opinion, it started with News Nation and Fox, and they were pushing this narrative because there was nothing else to push, quite frankly. There was nothing else to talk about, and even Steve Goncalves had gotten a lawyer, and the lawyer obviously said you need to quit shooting off your mouth, and he did, and we know he's upset, and I think he just has that bravado, that very macho personality, but it was causing problems by leaking out information. But even he went quiet. So there was nothing to talk about after the white Elantra being looked for, nothing. And it seemed like the only thing to talk about was, well, the police aren't telling us anything. The police aren't, maybe they don't know anything, so they're not telling us anything. And that wasn't true. But the police chief, Chief Fry, couldn't say that because they were looking for the suspect. They were probably doing that. They probably had the DNA. It came back. They had DNA at the scene, and they had that Elantra, which I do believe they saw in that body cam video. And somebody leaked the body cam, like said, oh, there's something in this video. They had requested it and FOIA'd it, which is Freedom of Information Act, which they're right. I mean, we have a right to do that. But I don't think the police wanted the suspect to know, we know your car, because everybody's like, oh, I see this, I see this. So as that was made public and people were talking about what was seen in it, that's when they came out with, oh, we're looking for this white Elantra between these years. I think they could see it in the headlights. Also, on the interview room later, I think it was about a week ago, right around Christmas time, either right before or the day after, Chris McCullough had a videotape of that, and one of his actual viewers that was viewing it live even noticed. He said you could see this white Elantra, and it was on the back road behind. The house had woods behind it, but there was another road that went further behind there. It didn't go to where the house was, but you could see the car traveling, especially because it was further into fall, winter. Well, actually, it was fall because it was the day after the murders, not when the live was happening that we saw it, but when it was actually recorded. And it was a reporter out front of the house talking about the murders that had happened there the night before. And you see this white car travel down the road. And then one of his viewers like, hey, you can also see you could also see it going up. So this car went up the road and went down the road. And if you looked at a map on that road, which of course I don't have the name of it, I want to say it starts with a W or a V. That road is a long road and it doesn't have a turnaround. So that car is seen as the reporter's talking, and it goes up, and it's because it's recorded, you could see it was 2 minutes time before it came back. So was the car, what was going on there? And because the car looked just like a white Elantra, people say that criminals can't stay away from crimes. They have to go and look. Was that the car, the person looking? I think so. And I think that that wasn't the first time law enforcement. I mean, I think law enforcement had that long ago and figured it out. But to us, to me watching, I was like, holy crap, that looks exactly like the car. But at this time, we didn't know anything about it. Also, when people say, by the way, let's drink to them catching the suspect and to Chief Fry for not losing his mind when everybody was trying to be like, oh, he's a small town cop. He can't handle it. He needs to, sorry. That really bothered me because this seemed to me like and I thought it was a serial killer. And since the victims would be like random to him, it would be very hard to find out. They would have to do all that work. So I'm shocked that they did it this fast, really. Kudos. But that video was amazing because it kind of showed that car skulking about. Somebody reported that statistically, just on the Idaho campus, there were 90 white Elantras registered. Like it's a very common car. So when people say, "Oh my gosh, Brian's dad, his parents, they knew, they helped, they had to. Why didn't everybody just know this guy?" It's a very common car. He's one town over. Yeah, it's only 10 minutes away, but there's these cars are everywhere. So I think it's important that we recognize that these were all pieces of the puzzle that were being put together. But it did turn out that at his parents' house, when they arrested him, that there was the white Elantra was there, and they took it into evidence immediately. And I think they knew they knew the car was attached to that name. They knew the DNA was attached to somebody related. You know what I mean? Then they start triangulating. Supposedly they had been following Brian the whole way home. He left, and I wrote down, so he did go back to school, according to people who are saying that they were his classmates. They're saying he did go back to class. Oh, and what is class, Patty? Why don't you tell us about that? Um, his class was criminology. He had just started at the University of Washington that fall, for his, oh my gosh, there's a big glare, for his PhD program, in criminology, which is, ology is the study of crime, is crime. So criminology is studying crime. And he had graduated the previous May from DeSale University. DeSale is in Pennsylvania, and there's this famous criminologist there that was one of his professors. And I wish I could get his thesis. So, um, in your master's program, usually your capstone project, it's either like a project or it's a paper, a big paper, going over. It's usually not research based, which is interesting to me that he was doing research. Usually, your master's thesis is like getting ready to do your doctorate. Your doctorate's where you do actual research. Your master's thesis is usually reviewing all the previous work and coming up with some new idea, but it's theoretical. It's usually not research based. So perhaps because he was working with the professor and this famous professor, her name is Ramsland. I think I'm saying that right. Um, she was she has written 68 books. She wrote the book about and studied and personally interviewed, Raider, the BTK, bind, torture, kill, serial killer. Now, this is something that's interesting when we talk about motives, and I'm only going to talk here, you guys, until like anybody cares, but I'm only going to talk until midnight because at midnight, Patty turns into a pumpkin. So we don't want that. And my partners in crime, yeah, that's what I'm going to call you guys. My partners in crime. Uh, a bunch of you, I don't want you to turn into pumpkins either. So we'll all end this at midnight if I even talk that long. Deal? So usually I'll probably do my nightcap around 10, 11, and it'll never go, hopefully, more than an hour. All right. So this woman, Dr. Ramsland, I hope I'm saying that right. I'll have more details. That's a good thing about being able to do this a little bit each night. I can hopefully I'll get a little bit better about what's going on. But her book about Raider and who what is his first name? I can't believe I'm blanking on that. Um, but his first kill was the Ortiz family. He was active in was it the late 70s, early 80s, and that was his first kill. Was five people, a whole family. And what's interesting is if Ethan hadn't been in the house, there would have been five girls. Now, is it a coincidence that in Brian's master's program, he worked underneath this professor who was an expert on and had interviewed and really gotten to know uh, BTK, and Brian, whose initials are BCK, also started, as far as we know, with a similar crime with five would have been five victims. So, and there was an interview room tonight, which you must go watch. You must go watch. It had Burgess. Ann Burgess is the real woman in Mindhunter. They use a different name in the I think it's Netflix series, right? Yeah. There's 2 seasons of it. I wish there was a third. I do not think there's going to be a third, unfortunately. She was the real woman who helped create the survey where they ask serial killers questions. She was on with Chris, and then he also had on Dr. Gary. I'm not going to say his name right, dyslexic detective. I will have these names. I'll do better for lives, I promise you. Dr. Gary, it's like Buscoca, Buscato. That sounds a lot like the cookie that you eat with coffee. And I'm hungry, but I don't think it's Biscotto, but something like that. Dr. Gary's Biscotto. Um, he works with a Dr. Victor. I'm gonna say, um, it's like Perseus. And they all are working, both Anne is working with Gary and Victor, at Boston. And they're building this research base on serial killers and mass murderers. And this is fascinating stuff if you're interested in criminology in the minds of these people. Um, so please go watch that. It's over an hour. You will enjoy it. All right. So, what did I learn from that? Well, they were talking about, so these are the most expert people in criminal minds, and they were saying he, he being Brian, BCK, um, was learning, and they all say if he is the person, so he's a suspect, it appears as if he could have been learning about these things because he had some inner conflict of wanting to do these things. And so the questions on the master's thesis project are unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, what what did you think about before your crime? What were you feeling before your crime? How did you choose your targets? How did you feel after your crime? This was a survey he was giving. Now, we don't know if he came up with these questions. These might have been a broader part of a broader survey done by Dr. Ramsland, if I'm saying her right. If I'm not saying her name right, I will by tomorrow night. But she could have been, um, or I don't even know if she was his main mentor. So maybe it was somebody else. Again, typically it would be your doctoral research where you do human research, meaning you have to go through, do human research, meaning you have to go through IRB. And that was a big thing. Somebody was like, what is this group IRB that he was talking to and asking his questions about? Who are these IRB group people? And it's like, it's an internal review board, IRB. And if you do human subjects, your survey, anything you do with humans, it has to go through this review board so that they can ensure that it's not anything like what they did to Ted Kaczynski, who was a Unabomber, who went through a Harvard research study. And if you've gone to college, and if you haven't, don't worry about it. But if you've gone to college and you have to take a Psych 101 course, they usually require you to take a lab with it, which is you having to be a guinea pig. And that's how they get subjects. So who's ever in college, and they say, oh, this research was only based on like men in the 50s. Yeah, because it was men going to college. Usually a lot of these studies are who's ever in school and has to take a class, then you have to, and usually often get to sign up. You go to like the psych building and there's a bunch of things, and they're saying, like, if you meet these criteria, would you like to be in this study? And then you get your hours for that class. So Ted Kaczynski signed up for something that was psychologically damaging, and I think we could say had a lot to do with how he turned out. I mean, he was young, but anyways, that's a whole nother story for a different night. But because of that type of study where people were hurt and damaged psychologically, um, everything we do medically and psychologically, um, any research, educational research, all of it, if it's human, you have to go through this IRB process, which is professors who look over all the questions. Somebody they read it, they say, would it hurt somebody to answer this? If and if not, you're allowed to do your study, and it's gone through IRB. So it's not some weird group, the IRB group. It's internal review board. Um, but it's I'm assuming that Dr. Rams, I know I'm not saying her name right, Ramsfeld. And the more I say it, the more it's going to come out wrong. Um, I feel like she had to have been the one supervising that research because those questions were very unusual. Let me see if I wrote them down. I mean, they were, yeah, I wrote down his master's thesis is very interesting. I would, the minute it hit, I was watching Ikadmel again. Ikadmel has had some great streams. Now, there's a big difference between watching. That's why I watch everybody, because watching Ikadmel, you get crowdsourcing. He takes calls. He's kind and respectful, and he will listen to anybody, and he gets a lot of really good information because he's accepting and because he is willing to listen and have callers call in even though he doesn't know who they are. And he gets people to crowdsource information, and he spends his whole day looking for stuff, and then he shows it on the screen and gives commentary on it, which I don't know how to do, so I can't do that for you. But B, he does it great. So you don't need another Icked because we have him. Um, he did a great one, and people popped up the questions about Brian's survey there. And I was writing in the live, like, somebody go to DeSale University. If you're a grad student, go pull that thesis, because somebody will take it off the shelf because of all the thing. But maybe within that first couple hours, or it may have been available digitally. I am no longer a grad student, or I would have gone through my portal, through my university, and looked, because you can look up and get. I would have loved to seen his whole thesis, because it would lay out, like, here's my background knowledge, here's why I'm asking these, and then it would have a survey there, and it would have had the responses, which we don't know. So if anybody out there in YouTube land knows or is a university student and can get into a portal, and I think by now it's gone. I would think it would be unavailable, but man, would that be something to read. But we do have the survey questions. So it seems like, because he was trying to obtain, also, oh my gosh, also he was trying to obtain subjects by just asking on Reddit boards and just on the interwebs, right? So he was like, he wanted, um, if you had committed a crime and been convicted of it or not, which is weird, because how would you know somebody's just not making up? I don't know how that got through IRB. I mean, I guess if you're looking for serial killers who haven't been caught yet, which weirdly he turned out to be one. I mean, it is strange. And tonight on the interview room, the experts, Gary and Anne and Victor, were talking about, if he was interested in this and he wants to learn more about it, that was like, what it was about, obviously about something about control, and he wanted to know if other people felt like he felt, and also what it would feel like, and a weird comparison, right? Um, they likened it to, and I really liked this analogy. I don't know if you've ever learned or wanted to learn to do something like play the piano, or for me it was quilting, and or maybe it's baking or cooking, and you watch a lot of how-to shows, maybe even work on your own car. My husband loves the car shows. So you watch people fix cars, or you watch people cook, or you watch people craft, and you think about it, right? Um, that's cool. Ooh, would I do that? Ooh, maybe if I did it, I would do it differently, or I love that. I would do it just like that. So, hmm, was he doing something similar? And the interesting thing they pointed out was, which I love this because this actually happened to me, when you think about doing something and then you actually enact it, doing it in real life, you run into all kinds of problems. It's not like what you imagined. No matter how much you research something, no matter how much you watch about it, read about it, look at manuals, doing it is a whole different ball game. And they likened it to driving. You can read about driving, you can hear about driving, you can be in the car and watch somebody else drive. But once you're driving, you're like, oh, hey, oh, I didn't expect this. And oh, there's all this other stuff happening. And it becomes different. I did it with quilting. I explained a whole quilting project to a preschool that my child was attending as a like we should make a preschool, and I was like we should make hands, and we can make little squares, and then we can at the end of the year each classroom we could have like an auction, and we could make money for the preschool. And the director's like, that sounds great, and I'll put you in charge of it. And I was like, super. And then I realized I have only watched quilting on TV. And like, how do I do this? And I had to think about it, right? So, um, thank goodness somebody who was a real quilter was another mom, and they sort of showed me it. But I was like, as I mean, she had a whole stash. Um, eh, I mean, my idea worked, but I wouldn't have really doing it was completely different. So, the experts were saying it looks as if like Brian, if he is the subject or whoever did this, the suspect, excuse me, not subject, were they thinking about it? Had he been studying and then he planned it all out, just like a research project, and then something, whatever, triggered him to do it that night and it didn't go to plan? And that's why inside it looked more chaotic. And perhaps he was going to kill all six, or maybe he thought there were five in there, just like the Ortiz family, which is kind of what I'm thinking maybe was going on in his brain. I mean, obviously, just my opinion, speculation. But maybe it was, they said it's really hard to kill somebody. And you thinking about it isn't the same as doing it. And, and there's unexpected things. Maybe Ethan was the unexpected thing. And I've often wondered, were Ethan and Xana, were they like watching movies? Did they fall asleep in the living room on a couch? And maybe they heard what was that, he started on the third floor. They heard what was going on. Then there was an unexpected extra guy there, and maybe they weren't sleeping where they were supposed to, and maybe one went off for the bedroom, and he had to take care of somebody there and then go chase somebody there. I don't know, obviously, because we don't really know where anybody was. I did want to mention, speaking of we don't know where everybody was, on the interview room. Oh no, excuse me. I'm sorry. It was on Duty Ron. Duty Ron is a police detective, and he has Ed. I was going to say Ed Harris. That's not right. That's an actor. His co-host Ed Wallace. Love Ed Wallace. He's a CSI guy. And they were looking at pictures of the house, and they went, I think Sleuthy gave them, Sleuthy's from Twitter. They went around the house looking at these pictures, and they could zoom in on the kitchen one. And as they zoomed in, on a cabinet above, next to where the refrigerator was, were those little rivulets similar to the ones outside the house. So somebody was lying in Xana's bedroom, because the little blood rivulets were right underneath the floor where her bedroom was. So somebody was lying there for a large, long enough that it seeped through the floor outside. But also, somebody was in the room above where that cabinet in the kitchen was. So Steve Gavlet, I can't even. Steve, Kaylee's dad, was saying that the girls were together in Maddie's room, maybe Maddie's new room, because it was the bigger room that's above, I believe, where that kitchen cabinet is. Somebody was lying there for a long time because that's where the little rivulets went through that floor into onto the cabinet, um, right above next to the refrigerator. So that was on duty run. It is the it is after way after Thanksgiving, but before Christmas, and it was his live where they spoke about forensics. So I believe it's Duty Run Forensics with Ed Wallace. That one, go watch it about one third to halfway through. You'll see when they zoom into the kitchen. So um, we don't know where everybody was, but it does seem like something didn't go according to plan, according to these other experts. And if it is Brian, which we believe it is, but that's just our supposition right now. It did seem like that makes sense that somebody would have this in their head, like, I like they have these feelings. They deal with them by learning about other people with these feelings. Then they decide, for whatever reason, that it's time to do this, and they plan it out. But when they get in there, it's not. It's like driving. You can learn all about it, but when you do it, it's different. That to me psychologically makes a lot of sense, personally. All right. Um, I will actually try to bring that. I wrote down really quick for you the facts. He was arrested in Pennsylvania, Albertsville. It's just south of Scranton. And it was, it's very rural, but very nice. Seems to come from a nice family, an intact family, and he has two older sisters. That was the other thing they talked about in the interview room. They didn't say this, but I'm going to say this. They were wondering about his relationship. Ann Burgess was saying, which is the first thing I want to know, is like something about his childhood. And I wonder if his two older sisters bossed him. And we know he was, or we think from what people have said, that he was overweight. He had a hard time in high school. He was bullied. And then he lost a bunch of weight between his junior and senior year and got mean and started bullying other people. I mean, which I guess happens, but we're wondering and he was very aggressive then. And he started boxing. It looks like his nose is broken, maybe from boxing. That happened all at the end of high school. So it seemed like he may be using some drugs. And I wonder if he was, because he didn't go immediately to college. He went from high school to a community college, which is fine and not that unusual or indicative of something indicative of something negative about a person who does that. And he also took vocational classes according to this friend, at the end of high school. So everybody says he's so brilliant, and we know he got into a PhD program and he did fine in his master's. So was the blip in high school, like not being academic, even though he was like quote unquote brilliant, was it due to drug use? Supposedly a friend who knew him said heroin, but I can't imagine anybody on heroin even being able to do. I mean, he like had a job and worked. I mean, I I don't know anything about heroin except from what I learned in Train Spotting. And let me tell you, I was pregnant right away when I watched it, and I was already feeling sick. And that show, I will tell you, I would not that I ever would touch drugs anyways, but holy moly, Train Spotting will make you never ever ever want to touch heroin, or at least watching it. Um, did not glorify drug use for sure. But could that have been it? I think it would be more something like meth, Adderall, something that got him going, steroids, because he got something that would make you skinny. I don't think heroin, just, I guess heroin you don't eat. I don't know. So he seemed to have been on something, but he seemed to have gotten back on track because he went to community college and then he went to this DeSale College University, graduated from there with his undergraduate, then did his master's with this famous teacher, and then got into a PhD program. Um, they did say his sister may that's part of the supposition. Let me just stick with facts. So his facts was that he graduated from high school, he went to community college, and then went to DeSale, where he graduated with his undergraduate and then his master's, working with that famous professor who it was a criminologist who studied and was very friendly with I mean professionally friendly, I guess. Can you be professionally friendly with the serial killer, with the BTK? um and he was studying the criminal mind, how they think, how they feel, how they strategize, and then their actions and how they felt afterwards. So was he learning? It seems like he was learning about himself. um We do know that his DNA tied him to the crime scene. We're not sure exactly how and where everything was found. That was the other thing that the experts on the interview show mentioned, was that not knowing exactly how it was going and having unexpected things wreck his like fantasy of how it was supposed to go, like Ethan being there maybe when he wasn't supposed to. um, and he followed all the girls on Instagram, and it makes me really wonder if he knew Kaylee was going to be like, oh, she's back and she's leaving again, and this will be it. I got If I'm going to strike with five, knowing that there were five girls in the house, if he wanted five because it equaled the what BTK did, and he wanted to be like, I'm BCK, I'm going to be like BTK, and I need five victims, and one of these girls is leaving. Oh no, that's going to screw up everything. I better hurry up. Maybe that's messed up his, planning. And then Ethan was there, and he didn't expect Ethan to be there because Ethan had gone to, remember, that date party, and maybe he figured he wouldn't be coming back that night and didn't expect him back. I don't know. Again, that's all supposition on my part. Um, let's see. What else? And the speculation, boy, you guys, the speculation. So we know that the speculation is that he followed all three girls on Instagram. I mean, I think people saw that. Um, that his sister lived next door, or that his dad owned the property next door. That's all, again, supposition. But it would maybe explain why he was there. Now, this is an older sister. I'm also wondering, and I am sure they've already checked this out, because if this would be a one and done, like if he had been thinking about this and planning it, he was in a cooling off period. Thank goodness they got him. Um, I just wonder if those 13th murders of 2020 and 2021 in Washington, like, how many years did his sister live there? Did his dad own property there? Did they have other ties? Was that why he went to the University of Washington, because they had property there, or his sister already went to school there? That would be really interesting because, like I said, we'll find out. But maybe he had been visiting Washington, making little trips. Who knows? Again, that is complete supposition on my part. Um, Again, we don't know if his dad owns the property. The drug use is speculation. His research project was more to study himself. That's speculation, but I think it's accurate. Um, what in? Oh, I wondered if there was. Um, it doesn't matter. I was talking before about bibliotherapy, when you read about things because you are interested, because it has something to do with yourself. So often, like when I read all the time, and I when I was like mom with small kids. I read a chick lit about mom with small kids. Before that, when I was a single, person dating, I read about single girls dating. It's like you read about where you are in life. So his studies, I mean, but we're all interested in true crime, right? Partners in crime. That doesn't mean that we're partners in true crime and finding it interesting. I always say, what can we learn from something? So, what can we learn from this is number one, lock your doors, lock your bedroom doors, I would say, especially if you live in a group living situation, lock your bedroom door at night. Um, and that is not victim blaming. I'm just saying this we don't know how he focused in on them. That's what I'm sure we're going to hear about. Somebody said that the house was too noisy, and if his sister lived next door, maybe she was complaining, and that was the thing that started him of like, well, then I guess I will be retribution. I don't know. We don't know, but it's regardless, like, you can't live your life freaked out, but you can be safe. Lock your doors when you're inside. Lock your car doors. Don't go on long trips by yourself. Don't go into the woods by yourself. I mean, some of these things are just life lessons that we can learn, right? And it's sad when bad things happen to good people, but also I think we aren't interested in true crime because we're the criminals, but we are interested in not being a victim, right? All right. Was this his first time? We don't know yet. uh Again, I'm really interested if he was in Washington those other 2 years. His classmates said he was quiet. Oh, so they said, this is speculation, right? Because we don't know if these are his real classmates, but that in class he had been quiet. I guess he was also a TA. A TA is a teaching assistant. When you get a stipend, and they pay for your university credits in a program, often you have to teach for that stipend, and you're being paid your university tuition. So they said he was a really tough grader. He was a really tough teacher. He seemed to be not good at reading signals. Now, I don't know, more speculation, but supposedly in Pennsylvania, a barkeep said there that Brian did come into their establishment, and he was even in their computers as somebody who was like a nuisance to the waitresses, that he didn't know how to take a hint, that he was like coming on to them, and that the manager said like, oh, I spoke to him, and he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You've got the wrong person. And never came in again. Again, was that really this person? Was it Brian? We don't know. But it seems to fit with everybody else talking about him as sort of awkward, odd, um, not really super social, but super smart. Um, Apparently, and after his it's very interesting that they said before his junior year he was nice and then he got aggressive. Was it drugs? Was he an addict at some point? And when he kicked it, I mean, was that keeping down something that then got let out like a genie in the bottle? We don't know. Okay, here were the survey questions if you're interested. Um, some of them are, why did you now remember the persons that he wanted to, this was a qualitative survey. Qualitative meaning you didn't rank something by number and then like add up numbers and get an average. This was, they were going to respond, and then he would code the responses to see what, code them according to some theory. Maybe the theory of the person he was working under, maybe he was coming up with his own theory. So his questions are, why, these are open ended. Why did you choose that victim and target over others? Before making your move, how did you approach your victim or your target? What was your first move to accomplish your goal? Describe your thoughts and feelings. Um, How did you accomplish your goal? Describe your thoughts and feelings. After committing the crime, what were your thoughts and feelings? Okay, so and then the experts in the on hidden true crime Dr. John, the forensic psychologist, a lot of them were talking about like these are questions, yeah, we wouldn't necessarily put on a survey. These are questions we would want to that happen during an interview when you catch a mass murderer, when you catch a serial killer. Like they're like, yeah, I'd like to ask him these questions. These are things you ask people when they've been caught. And so are they unusual questions for a criminologist? Not in the interview room. It to us it seems odd because of who he turned out to be, right? And it seems like he was trying to learn more about it. But in the field of criminology, these are the things that they want to know to help catch these predators, to um, ID them, which is it's the one teacher. It's going to be very interesting when she's allowed to talk. Now she's not talking now publicly, probably because she's going to be at the center of, either she's going to be a witness for maybe both sides. It's going to be very interesting. So she can't talk right now. Um, yeah, so some people have seen it as, oh, he wanted to know so he could better commit crimes. I personally think it's more of he was interested, like, are these people like me? Am I like that? How does this work? Um, I don't know if it was so much like he was learning from that. I mean, he had been studying criminology. I think he probably had some compulsion, right? And again, we don't know why. Does it have something to do with having two sisters? Did he find sisters like aggressive? We don't know. Um, was he like on the incel spectrum? We don't know. All right. So we will find out more about Brian. But again, for the families of Kaylee and Maddie and Zaina and Ethan, at least part of this is over, which is good. All right, so it's almost midnight. I have 5 more minutes. The other quick updates were about trials coming up. So we have the Murdoch case. Sorry, Alec Murdoch. I'm saying it with my South Cackalack accent. That's going to be starting in January, maybe. We'll see. It benefits Alec. If you listen to Scott Reich on True Crime, it benefits the person being accused to force the state to hurry up. And they're already having problems. And Dick Harpootlian, man, you might not like him, but he knows all the not tricks. He knows everything to do. And if you think somebody's guilty, you don't like that their lawyer is using everything they've got. Of course, we all want to have a good defense. It's hard. I don't know. There was some consumptive testing, which we know all about from the Valadebo case about consumptive testing, which is when one side, usually it's the side gathering the evidence, so it's the prosecution. When they have evidence that is going to be used, they usually want to save a little bit of it, or at least tell the defense, hey, look, we're going to consume this. So you want to watch it? Hey, you want to watch us do this or what? And this whole shirt that Alec was wearing at the time of the murders was not saved, and there was consumptive testing. I don't know. There seems to be an expert whose opinion was changed. They asked him to take a second look. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Alec Murdoch, obviously, it seems like lots of very bad, really bad financial crimes. Murder. I think to me, I can see, I definitely think hiring somebody was in the cards. That's my opinion. Him doing it, I don't know. And then I didn't know this, but Paul was found in a closet. He had been shot in a closet. So he ran and hid. That is horrific. Um, Did he? I'd often wondered since he was shot with a shotgun from the house and Maggie was shot with an AK something, I believe, some automatic weapon. I always wondered because Paul wasn't supposed to be there. He was there just looking after a friend's dog. Did he see his mom get shot and then run? And then, like, he came out thinking something's happening. He came out with a gun and then he saw whatever went down and that person then went and took care of him. I don't know if Alec could do that. Not that it takes guts to commit that type of murderous crime, and he was definitely his back was up against the wall. I don't know. So I don't like the weird consumptive testing without telling both sides. I don't like it. Well, I mean, I don't like Alec, but I still think murder, death penalty, boy, you better be eh, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, and sharing everything. And I don't know, man. Here's what I think, and tell me if you agree. But I think the powers that be in South Cackalack have decided that they are cutting Alec Murdoch loose. So all the things that protected him, those people are like, no, don't know ya, don't know ya. I mean, and I don't think he committed everything all by himself. We know that his one friend Russ at the Palmetto State Bank went down hard, and he will follow. But it just, I think there's more people that know what's going on, and they're all trying to cut off from him. So they're like, not me. We'll see. Um, and the other thing that's happening is the Vallow Davo case, and it is going. I do not think there is going to be more time delays. John Pryor is in trouble, no matter how you cut it. Dude is saying, I still don't have my mitigation specialist, blah, blah. Okay, your client should be declared indigent, and you should have said that. And you should have said that a long time ago. You've had over 2 years, and you can't claim, I need more time. You wanted to sever the cases, you tried everything you could. And now you're like, no, no, you need more time because you know Lori's case has to go because she is asking, like Alec Murdoch, for a speedy trial. And that is very serious. You aren't allowed to be held without being tried in our country. And that is a very big deal. And it pressures the state. But now the state they have made a lot of accommodations to, get this in a fair trial area. So they moved it from the small county where the crimes took place to um, I'm pointing over there, over there to Boise, across the state. And let me just tell you, people, that takes a lot of organization because you just basically move. If you remember Rob Wood and Lindsay Blake arguing that like it was going to be expensive and they had to take all their staff and move them to Boise, and everybody's like, sorry, Judge Boyce was like, yeah, we're going to do this, going to Boise. So now, and it's been scheduled, I think, once before, and it had to be stopped. Now we're going. Everybody's on board, and now Pryor's trying to. I need more time. No, I personally, I don't think he really. I think he just wants severance, and so he knows that Lori's case is going to go, and he wants his client nowhere near Miss Vallow. And I will just tell you, they were sealed forever and ever, for eternity, not even till death do us part, because they believe that when you are sealed, you're together through multiple probations, meaning multiple lives. Okay, well, Chad, you wanted to be sealed. You're sealed. You're stuck. All right, guys. Oh, it's 12:02. Anyways, so True Crime Grapevine fans, Patty Lee signing off. I will see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. Say yes way to the new year. And we'll learn more. Leave me any comments down below. Please like and subscribe. Anyways, and I saw Jazz. Jazz was here. Hi guys. Thank you so much. We'll do a nightcap every night. Let me know if you want any drink tried. And bye.